here to ACC's Balcones Poetry and Fiction Prize winner readings. This is going to be our big event for this semester, and our department chair can't be here tonight. She's a little bit under the weather, so I'd just like to take a second to brag about our department. We're kind of inordinately proud of all of the things that we do on the community college level. We have a very active creative writing department. We offer a degree. We offer classes in poetry, fiction, memoir, and other kinds of nonfiction, screenwriting, writing for children, playwriting, young adult. So a very wide range of special subjects that we offer in our creative writing classes. We have online and in-person classes. I think all of our classes are offered in a continuing education format as well as for credit. That is the same class. So the final plug for our creative writing classes is, well, besides our great faculty, present company excluded, all our other faculty who are so great, and we're cheap, really cheap. So among our other events coming up this semester, we have here at Malvern, and a special thanks to Malvern Books, because we're so crowded for space and so cramped for space around ACC, even with all our explosive growth going on, that Malvern Books provides us with space and makes this available to us and goes out of their way and stays up late so we can do our literary events. So great. Thank you. And once a month we do our literary coffee house here. Even though there's no coffee, there are reasons I could go into. But coming up March 11th, we have, it's an open mic, but we have a featured reader, and our featured reader is Janine Kruger, known as Doc. She's a poet and playwright over at Houston Tillotson. In April 8th, we have Ursula Pike, who is a former ACC student who's now earned her MFA at the Institute of American Indian Arts, and we close out our season on May 6th with Owen Edgerton, whom some of you may know as an author and filmmaker here in Austin. It's my privilege to direct the Balcones Poetry Prize, which since 1995 has awarded, now with our present prize winner from 2017, Alessandra Lynch, the 21st prize that we've awarded. There were 2 or 3 years in there that were missed, but we're pretty proud of this. And I meant to look, what was the year that the fiction prize was begun?
I know Brian is the 8th winner of the fiction prize.
The 8th winner, so 2010, I think, was our first award. And this time, for the first time ever, the Balcones Fiction Prize or Balcones Poetry Prize goes to an Austin resident. And we're going to hear from Brian first tonight. What else? We offer $1,500 for an outstanding book of poetry and an outstanding book of fiction published during the year. And then we get to bring these wonderful people to town, or discover these wonderful people who are already in town, and make an event of it. So first we're going to hear from our Fiction Prize winner. I'm going to bring up my colleague Joe O'Connell, who will start the ball rolling.
I'm going to introduce the introducer. Let's do this. It's very weird for a community college to have a creative writing program separate from English department. It's very weird for a community college to have 2 national awards. And it's even weirder that a guy from here in Austin won it this time. And he's nationally known. You have to be, let's be clear about that. This is a national prize, and his book has gotten acclaim nationally. For the fiction prize, we go through a process. I have 3 preliminary readers who cull it down to finalists, and they are presented to a final judge. I stay out of it all because I promote the prize, so I don't do any of the judging. But I do choose the judges. And about 15 years or so ago, I met Donna Walker Nixon, and I realized this lady has her hand in everything literary in Texas. Very much so. And she is the founder of some literary journals, Windover, Langdon Review. She is the editor of the series of books, Her Texas. She's formerly a full professor at University of Mary Hardin-Baylor, and then also a professor at Baylor. And I knew that she's also a novelist too. She's a fiction writer herself. And I knew she would be a great person for this. And the final choice is hers. And she is the person who chose Brian as the winner. And I introduce you to Donna Walker Nixon.
Appreciate Joe for allowing me this honor of evaluating the manuscripts or the novels. And I want to begin by saying we all get by with a little help from our friends. My friend Elizabeth Houston helped me, Elizabeth Dell, helped me in reaching the final decision. But now I want to start the introduction of Brian. First of all, Dulce et decorum est. How many of you know that poem by Wilfred Owen? Okay, that is one of my favorite poems. But more than that, I think that if we look at the poem, it traces back to World War I, to Wilfred Owen, a young writer who died at the age of 18, after he had penned this beautifully descriptive passage. And when I began to read Brian's Dulce book, that's the first thing I think of is Dulce et decorum est, because basically I think that we forget the horrors of war. And one of the things that comes to mind for me was this book is so descriptive, so aware of it, so aware of the horribleness of war. If you look at it, I think it traces back to the fact that Brian Van Reet after 9/11, he left school at the University of Virginia and and he had been an Eccles Scholar. He left school to go and fight the good fight. And he came back, and what we see here is that this book recognizes the fact that war is hell. And I think that war is hell on all the people who are part of it. And I think we see that in Dulce et decorum est, and we certainly see that in Brian's book. And I think basically it's not me that we're talking about. We're talking about Brian, and we're here to look at his book and hear his reading. So I will leave the table for him.
Thank you. Thank you, John, Joe, and Donna for the introduction and for judging the contest. It's really an honor to be the first Austin author to win this prize, and I think it's outstanding that our community college offers a national book award. I think that's unique in the United States, as far as I know. I think it's outstanding. I got to go to a creative writing class the other day, and the level of discussion in the class was as good as any workshop that I've sat in on. So really a valuable resource. So yeah, the line from that poem is Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, and it means it's sweet and becoming to die for one's country. And then in the Romans took that unironically, and then Wilfred Owen, he kind of makes it, you understand by the end of the poem, it is not sweet and becoming to die for your country. And I guess if there's one thesis to this book, that's probably it. It's told from 3 points of view, 3 rotating points of view. 2 are American and 1 is an Egyptian guy. And I'm going to read you part of chapter 4, which is the introduction to one of these Americans. It's kind of a self-contained reading, so it might work. And also, I can do this voice out loud. Some of the other voices I can hear in my head, but may not be able to read them as well. You don't need any setup because this is your introduction to this character. His last name is Sleed, and he is a tank crewman, which is the job I did in the Army. The chapter's called Trophies. Iraq, Highway 1, Palace Row. I'll never be able to forget. The desert that day was so empty of any living thing, it looked like the sand-blasted side of a dead planet. We were halted on a rest and refuel, killing time messing around on some destroyed Iraqi armor not far from the highway. That's when it started, if you had to pick a point. Back when we thought memories would not be enough. Galvan and Fitzpatrick, and yeah, me too, wanted souvenirs for the grandkids yet to be born. A helmet or bayonet to take home and prove we were in the shit. Trouble was, everything good on those tanks had burned or melted. Their crews, too. Galvan had already gotten a few pictures with a digital camera he'd been carrying around everywhere since he bought it at Camp New York, probably for this exact reason. He took some more of this one guy and went in for a close-up. The man's teeth were coal black, his hands like 2 claws planted into the sand that had gotten so hot in the fire it crunched like thin ice when you walked on it. That was the first time in my life I'd ever seen anything like that. And the war felt really fucking real all of a sudden. I got this complicated feeling that has bothered me ever since. It's hard to describe, but it's like knowing every decision, even something dumb like what to eat for breakfast or what route to drive to the store, might be the thing that kills you or saves you or gets somebody else killed, and there's no way to know. Like everything is so important, it's pointless to worry about anything. Photographing dead troops fell under a gray area of the law of war. Whether or not it was legal depended on why you were doing it. Like, a combat correspondent would be allowed to take a picture, it would even be part of his job, but for ordinary Joes, that same picture could get you busted down. You could safely kill them, but not take pictures of what you'd killed. Made sense to me. Once you start in with trophies, even photographs, the nastier shit is bound to follow. I hoped Fitzpatrick would stop Galvan with the pictures, but no. He and Galvan were thick as thieves. On their own, they could have been okay, but they fed off each other, and that made for bad news. Galvan was our tank commander. Fitzpatrick, the driver, was this big, arrogant bastard we called Rooster for how cocky he was. Not for no reason. Dude was smart. Seemed like he basically got what the world was like, how to make his ugly piece of it better. But the truth about war is some people are good at it, and people tend to enjoy showing off their talents. Me, I couldn't stand the Army. Felt like an idiot for ever believing left, right, left would solve my problems. Grinding pills to snort in my parents' basement, working nights in a video store. I thought enlisting would give me a higher purpose, something to fight for, but as it turned out, I was the same person anywhere, a watcher. Usually the wrong place, wrong time kind. To my credit, though, I did get tired enough of Galvan and his pictures to speak up. I said, "You ain't worried about those Geneva Conventions or nothing, huh, Sergeant?" Galvan just laughed. "You heard me though, Sarge?" He acted like he didn't, took another picture just to rub it in, and then rose to his full height, which wasn't much. This scrawny Puerto Rican dude, but not scrawny in a weak way. He had that wiry strength. He held the camera close to his mouth and blew the dust from the lens. Geneva Conventions? That's good, Sleeve. Real smart. Don't you know this whole fucking war is illegal? He shook his head like I was too much of a fool to bother with, looking at the screen on the camera, scrolling through what he'd gotten. "Well, I just want to go on record," I said. "All respect, I think this is some sick-ass bullshit." "Noted. Now fuck off." We hung around till we spotted Sergeant First Class Blornsbaum, our platoon's head honcho, making his way up the ridgeline from the road where our tanks were parked. Seeing him put the fear back in us, Galvan stopped with the camera and slipped it into his chemical suit thigh pocket, playing it cool. But Blornsbaum had not just fallen off the turnip truck yesterday, as he always said about himself. He was a lifer, veteran of Gulf War I, Kosovo, and peacetime posts all over the world. skin the color of a toad's belly that refused to tan and would only burn in the desert. So he was always slathering sunscreen on himself, real diligent about shit like that, personal hygiene. He stood there trying to look tough, but it came out painfully confused, like someone had just smacked him on the back of the head. His eyes passing over Fitzpatrick, me, Galvan, the dead bodies, the burned out tanks, and finally back to Galvan and his pocket where the camera was stowed. He knew, we knew, he knew. Let me guess, he said. You've been playing war reporter. He unscrewed his face and spat on the sand, shook his head and chuckled, the one reaction I'd not expected. The sound of his growly laughter made me feel lightheaded, and I could practically hear the vein in my forehead throbbing. He'd thrown me. Thought for sure he would take Galvan's camera and make him delete the pictures or even report him for violating the regs. Instead, he snapped his fingers at him. Hey, Ernie Pyle, get one of me. He stood by the destroyed T-72 with a big, shitting grin and flashed the peace sign. Galvan took his picture and then started a series of shots that would make a panorama if he stitched them together. He took one of our tanks in the distance, one of Fitzpatrick holding his rifle like something out of a recruiting commercial, and finally he came around to me. That lucky bastard managed to catch the exact moment I started to drop. I felt myself stumbling and swaying, my vision fading all white and hairy, and one of my knees buckled out from under me, my head so light it was like my body was stretching into gas. It sort of felt nice, because I thought that if a bullet did happen to hit me right then, it would pass clean on through without doing any harm, just like I was a ghost. I revived, laid out on the desert floor, gritty sand pressed on my cheek and nose, and there was something wet scraping across the other side of my face into my ear. Blornsbaum was shouting like he was enjoying himself. Get that dang thing off him. I sat up and saw it was a dog licking me that had snapped me out of it. Spit all around its mouth, disgusting. I shoved it away. Its rusty yellow fur felt greasy. A desert pariah dog, kind of a mongrel cur like an oversized coyote. It wasn't trying to bite, just licking crazily like it had already loved me for years. It ran circles around me, yipping and rolling its eyes. Blornsbaum managed to snag its neck and hold it in one place, between his legs, so it had nowhere to go, nothing to do, but whip its tail over the sand. What the hell? I said. Dude, you just dropped like a fucking rock, Fitzpatrick said. He handed over his canteen and I washed out my mouth, then took a swallow, the water tasting like dust and plastic. He went on. For a second we thought you'd been shot or something, so we're all taking cover, wondering where the hell is the sniper, and then that dog comes trotting down the wadi. Sleed, Sleed, Blornsbaum said. Sleed the gentle, Sleed the meek. Wild animals flock to the poor son of a bitch like he's St. Francis wrapped in Kevlar. We have absolutely got to get this fainting business checked out, Sleed. He let the dog loose. It rushed me again, bowing and scraping in the sand. You're a good boy, I said, running my fingers like a comb through his fur to work out some of the mats. I found myself already growing fond of the damn thing. It had been so long since I had touched any living creature in a gentle way. Galvan took a knee and patted the dog. Even he couldn't resist some canine affection. Well, Frago, he said, scratching him behind the ears and naming him at the same time. Considering your only food source out here is these barbecued motherfuckers, you might want to roll with us a while. Today's your lucky day. Is that cool, Sergeant? I said to Blornsbaum. Can you ride in our tank? Galvan wants that dirty mud in his turret. It's his problem. Never did care for dogs myself. The battalion was leaving soon, and we made our way down the steep side of the high ground where the sand was loosest and deepest. We took sideways steps, and the dunes gave way and rolled in little avalanches. The dune gave way. Frago followed, zigzagging a switchback. It already felt like he belonged. Funny how in 5 minutes you can get so fearsomely in love with a dog. He was our first trophy, a mascot for the hard times ahead, a scavenger, a mutt, a survivor of uncertain pedigree. Correction, he was our second trophy, counting Galvan's photos. Thank you.